All right. All you crazy Netrunner fans that are up here deck building, getting their swerves on, cramming stuff in, trying to find that secret Netrunner card algorithm before Worlds, cooking up that secret sauce, brewing some big deck changes, or just basically scouring the bowels of the internet for someone who has accidentally posted their winning deck online. But I assume mostly everyone's just staying up testing, cooking, chefing up with
Mr. Boyardee. Gotta whip it. You know what I mean? Get the wrist action. You see? No.
Deck cooking with Hollis is on immediately after Bad Publicity.
The secret sauce to the perfect deck is Record Reconstructor. That's it. David Weeks pro tip.
No.
Guys, we are counting down the hours to Worlds. It is inching ever so closer with every passing moment. So we appreciate you putting your eyes on the screen and away from your cards and your testing while you join us for some lighthearted discussions. Tonight we're going to talk about the new Most Wanted list that drops. We are going to do an incredible amount of factions in one show. We're going to talk about 3 factions and 1 extra card. Mind-blowing experiences as again, 3 more factions will come to a, I don't want to say bitter close, because maybe these will be better, right? So we've had all the factions end on a lower note. Will the factions that we talk about tonight end on higher notes?
Well, by default, they're going to be the best and worst final card of each faction. So
Jesus, how does this happen?
It can't get better or worse.
So enough stupid puns. Enough. We are going to get involved in the mini factions tonight. So let's just give I want to just say thank you for not forgetting about them. This honestly would have been the biggest crime in the history of Netrunners, where if the game, because we believe that, if you are taking the internet gospel for its word and the printings of FFG, when these cards were designed and this pack was released, we did not know up until the 0 hour that Netrunner was going to come to a conclusion with the legal dispute between Wizards of the Coast and Asmodee North, the parent company of Fantasy Flight. So we are just very thankful that the mini factions got this extra boost. Well, not an extra boost, but just some additional cards to throw in there, some additional cards to deck build with, that are faction specific, to help round it out. I would have loved to see a little more. I would have loved to see things flush a little differently, but beggars can't be choosers, and we don't want to be choosy beggars.
Hey man, they've still got 25 influence.
Yeah.
They can have it all if they want.
We'll see. We'll see if they do have it all. You guys want to? Is that a good enough intro, or does anyone else want to add something about that?
No, I'm good.
It sounds good to me. Let's jump right into it.
Perfect.
Our first card of the mini factions here is Algernon. This is a unique program, 0 to install, 1 MU, and a whopping 5 influence. That's what we like to see. It says when your turn begins, you may pay 2 credits to gain a click. Okay. And if you do, trash Algernon when your turn ends if you did not make a successful run this turn. Damn. All right, well, I gotta say, guys, having dabbled a bit in the Atom Sphere over the last several months, I can tell you that this card feels so characteristically Atom. It's excellent for that kind of aggressive, I'm going in, I'm gonna guarantee accesses, and this card just icing on top of that cake.
Hollis?
I mean, we've. Oh goodness gracious! I'm gonna be honest. I cannot remember all the names of Adam's directives, but basically he can make a run and ignore subroutines, or is it bypass? I can't remember for two clicks. And so this is another tool in that kit where, number one, if you're forced to have to do that, maybe getting this out can give you a little extra breathing room to utilize clicks in that way. But beyond that, it allows you have to start making an evaluation on how much you value that additional click. 2 credits for a click seems like fair, considering a click can be anything and credits are credits, right? So I like it. 0, and also, big bonus, 0 cost to install.
Mm-hmm.
Seems like not horrible.
Yeah.
For those keeping track at home, Hollis, I believe you were thinking about always be running.
Which allows you to spend 2 clicks to break 1 subroutine. Which, if you do the math here, and you've got 5 clicks on a turn, and if you have to run click 1, and this gives you an extra 1, you now have 4 clicks, break 2 subroutines with 2 clicks apiece. That's some pretty good Adam math right there.
He did the math. It checks out. Don't add him. Don't.
Watch out.
Anything else there, Hollis?
Nothing.
Nothing. Tapped. So I went in this order because I do believe I should have the last word to say on my man Adam.
Please. Take the floor.
Thank you. I feel that this card is very synergistic with the theme of Adam. It really plays into to his unique style of obviously the click manipulation, things like that. Being a memory slot, I feel like it really hurts him a little bit. So MU management is going to have to be a thing you're going to have to be concerned about for this. And I feel that this is going to be something that I think this is more late game pressure than it is early game setup, because you're really going to have the money to be able to like some good econ, like really generating to be able to start taking advantage of this. So maybe that's the play here is really looking to this is that late game pressure after Adam has stalled out for a bit. We all know that if you get the best opening setups with him, you can. Alex said he applies very heavy pressure from the get-go, a very aggressive, criminal style of player with a twist. But in certain games, that can teeter out if you're not able to scoop anything from the wins and put the court back on their heels. So he kind of dipped and swerved later on as his tricks would run out a bit. So hopefully this is what you guys Adam players and around the world we're looking for, this late game boost for Adam. Fitting, but I don't think this is anything that was too crazy. Adam wasn't missing it, but it's a unique card to have available to him. Thank you very much, Adam. You served me and my playtime well. Hats off to you, sir. I hope there's some people at Worlds representing, and I hope that he has a good showing. He's kind of petered out lately as more competitive builds have hit the scene that people have moved away. So Adam I think has peaked a cycle or so back. I don't feel that he has a lot of hope, but he does have luck.
Yeah.
That's it.
And great art. I mean, oh man.
Yeah. You know what? Very sympathetic too.
Play mat.
Yeah, that should be the world's play mat. Right. Right? Because very thematic too, right? Like the flowers, like the beauty of this game just disintegrating away.
Wow. Okay. Wow.
Woo!
Hits
All
me in my
right.
feels.
Yeah.
Well, with that, let's move on. If we're all good on Algernon there,
Yep.
head to Reboot. This is the Apex card of the pack. This is a run event. 1 cost, 5 influence. It says make a run on archives. If successful, instead of accessing cards, install up to 5 cards from your heap face down. Remove Reboot from the game instead of trash. All right. So I'm not an Apex player. And not many people are.
I try. I converted.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
And
I could see the uses for this, right? Like, this is economy for your trashing installed card style engine, your endless hunger, your heartbeat, all that stuff. And with a simulator, which came out somewhat recently, you can selectively say, hey, you know that liberated accounts that I finished using that's now in my heap? Well, I'm going to install that face down, assimilate it back. Oh, no, sorry, that one doesn't work. That one doesn't work. This is See, this is me not being an Apex player. That combo doesn't work. But stuff like Cyber Cypher, there you go. That card works. Where you trash that, and then you can flip it back and then assimilate it. So there's, like, shenanigans, I think. But I don't know if this is the thing that's going to push Apex any higher than it already is.
Hollis?
Yeah, nah. I mean, I don't care if it's the last card. I'm not giving it extra props for no reason. No, it's just. Yeah, Apex has, Apex, because it can only have virtual resources, utilizing face down cards for things such as like Aesop's Pawn Shop as an example. Well, if that's what you're going to use, right? Like Aesop's Pawn Shop to generate economy, yeah, neat. At the same time, just not good enough. Just not. I don't think so. I mean, it would be amazing if there was a better way an even better way, let me Magic Christmas Land. What I would have liked to see, because the name of the card is Reboot, what I would have liked to see is something that more or less allowed you to replay cards that may have already been face down more often, or just straight up take cards that have been trashed from any X number of reasons and make that card now available at a discount or something. I don't know. It would be in the same level how we saw like such a amazingly busted yet pretty much remaining in faction card like Emergent Creativity and Atom. I would have hoped that Reboot was going to be of the similar strength, but basically with such limited influence, only usable in Apex. And it really, for this being 5 influence, it's not even close to the level of Emergent Creativity. So, sorry.
100%. Like, the fear of lowering the influence on this card and having it moved outside of faction is ridiculous, right? Maybe it would have even been cooler, because then if they had a lower influence on it, it could have given you a chance to move some other cards out. Been very interesting from a deck building perspective. Hollis, tying into the theme there from I will extend that my hope after reading the title of this card, Reboot. Alec mentioned that this card very much has the synergy with Assimilator. I mean, if Assimilator wasn't there, this card probably would be even shittier. I'll say it. I would have really, really liked... Okay, so Reboot and Assimilator are kind of that pair. I would have really, really liked it to pair more with Apocalypse. Apex is a number one defining card. If it had have paired with Apocalypse and it was a way to reboot your board state, like a quicker after an Apocalypse... I think that would have been incredible. That would have been the boost that Apex needed to come in and do that apocalyptic punch and be able to reboot again into a a state, almost like it didn't need to be a reboot. It's just, awake from hibernation or something like that. Like when you hibernate your laptop and you open it up and all the programs pop back up.
Yeah.
That's where the theming and stuff should have gone. Is this doing anything? This is, I feel like if you are an Apex player, you're going to do some weird trickery about getting around the you can't install non-virtual resources and stuff with this, because you're putting the cards face down and then using the assimilator to flip them up. But it's still not giving the faction the boost that it needs. And I mean, trust me, this faction needed a boost. It's such an amazing concept, but it is so held down by so many restrictions. Everyone who plays it knows what those are. We don't have to get into it, and not enough people play it to care about what I'm saying right now anyway. So, sorry, but this one here does not end on a bang. This is just disappointment.
Yep.
Yeah. I really don't see it. The thing that I've always wished of Apex is, because Apocalypse is so potent and so backbreaking, that to sit across from an Apex player should feel like, oh god, they are going to Apocalypse me multiple times, and I have to win before they, completely end it.
Yep.
And I've not sat across from any Apexes, but when I do, oftentimes I'm not thinking that. I'm thinking, oh, good.
Yeah.
They're going to dirtle around for 8 to 10 turns, and then I'm going to res some ice that Endless Hunger doesn't break, or whatever, a Whoredom or whatever, and they're just going to be locked out, and that's going to be the end of their game.
Brother,
and so I really,
100%. Apex does not bring the fear that it should with a card in faction as detrimental, right?
Right. So with Reboot, right, with a card that sounds like that, I think you're spot on. You need the effect to get to that level of like putting the fear of God in people, that like, oh damn, they're gonna Apocalypse and then they're gonna Reboot, and then it's all over for me. Even more so, this could have been the boot heel on top of the corp for those Apocalypse turns, and instead it's not helping.
And I feel there was a way that they could have done it too, where it didn't need to be overpowered, this is definitely not doing anything. When I understand Apex has setup issues, but this it's not like this is gaining it any more speed installing cards face down, right? Like, and then having to use a simulator to double click to flip it. I mean, like, you're not giving it any tempo. You're just all you're doing is you're not accelerating the B part of the game, which is the playing. Mm-hmm. All you're doing is accelerating the A part of the game, which is the deck building. You're giving people, you're expanding deck building choices, but that is not needed here in this faction. You really needed to accelerate the actual play and the fear. That's it. Sorry, Apex. Put this one to bed.
Oh well. Bye, buddy. It's been fun.
It's been frustrating.
Frustrating. Yeah, you're right. Well, speaking of tempo, can we talk about my favorite mini faction card?
Holy shit! Yeah.
This is Office Supplies, a 4-cost event for Sunny with 3 influence. And it says reduce the play cost of office supplies by 1 for each link you have. And then you can gain 4 credits or draw 4 cards. That's really good.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah. And it is like, in the ways that the other 2 cards don't accomplish, I think this accomplishes filling a gap that the mini faction really had. which was Sunny players are consistently too slow to get into the game. And they're sitting there. They're going to have an unbeatable rig in 20 turns. And you better watch out when they get there. And this just says, hey, pay 2 credits, draw 4 cards. Or pay 1 credit, draw 4 cards. Or pay 0 credits and draw 4 cards. Like, hello? That is tight. So
Yep.
Big fan.
Hollis?
I mean, the flexibility here is awesome because this card. Okay, so this card costs 2 at worst. Assuming you're gonna play it in Sunny, the card costs 2, and so would you pay 2 credits to draw 4 cards? That's not great, but it's better than clicking to draw. I would never gain actual credits off of this. But the moment this becomes a card that costs 0, this is disgustingly nuts. This is a sure gamble for nothing at the lowest base cost that it could be. And it's better than a diesel, also for nothing. And the fact that it's not technically it's considered a modal card. Is that right? Am I using that term correctly? You've got 2 options here.
Yeah.
I mean, like a modal card that in faction is probably going to cost you 0 to 1. That's going to give you credits or cards. That seems awesome. This just seems really good. Yo, it's so good. Look at the option. They kind of make fun of like the concept in the card art because she's like, man, which donut do I? I want to pick the donut that gives me the cards. The donut that gives me. I like it.
Art's so good too.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's any underground Canadian fans here, but the art totally reminds me of old Bob and Doug McKenzie's Strange Brew. If you guys have seen that movie, Rick Moranis, Dave Thomas, it hilariously funny, just makes fun of all the Canadian stereotypes. But that one scene where they bribe the lady with jelly donuts to get into the office building, this is what this card is all about. I hope that's the Easter egg from it. But Hollis, did you have anything else to say?
No.
So I will start off by saying, what the F were they thinking printing this card? Why does Sunny get the boost of all boosts? This is everything she needed compared to the other ones. The other cards are all like, oh, let's do this weird little thingamajig, and if people play with this combo or this style, we'll accelerate it, and it'll be fun and creative and stuff. And they're just like, oh, for Sunny? Yeah, we'll just make her something incredibly bananas that she wasn't already competitive or borderline competitive before. Now she could practically be almost probably a tier 1 deck with her, with some of the builds that you could get out of her. Everything about this card complements her. It's not like the other cards where it's so unique. It's like, if you're playing Sunny, you're playing Link anyway. Like Hollis said, you're automatically getting a discount. You're building Link into her because the rest of her suite of amazing breakers falls around that kind of set of Link. You're giving her card draw, which in faction card draw that she needed before, which is now unbelievable. You don't have to splash in some of the other stuff. You're able to take her builds in with some of that influence and import some of those other powerhouse cards. And you're making it like it's a dual thing. Maybe you already have your setup. Maybe you draw one of these late game and you're just like, well, shit, I'm just gonna get my money back. But I mean, so there's no real crazy disadvantage for it. Just honestly unbelievably bananas. The fact that they did not complete this as a full 5 pip of influence is ridiculous. I know 3 seems a little steep, but we've seen heavy Link builds in other runners, and this is not unrealistic to think that it could be ported out of faction for that cost if we move back to that other runners building heavy link, to combat some of those other effects in the game that the Corp has. So I just think that this card is honestly bananas to see it as a mini faction card. Sunny definitely ends on huge 2 thumbs up, and I would not sleep on her in competitive play after the release of this card. Just ridiculous. How did this happen?
Well, we saw that Adam got hooked up last cycle, right? Emergent Creativity and Logic Bomb just being 2 of the sweetest mini faction cards printed since the Data and Destiny. So I think Adam got off just fine. Apex, I don't know what happened there. But I think Sunny had it a long time coming. This real need for this kind of effect. So, now it's in there. Good for Sunny players, because I think this is going to be money for Sunny.
So there you have it, ending on an amazing little rhyme there. Those are the mini factions closing out that. We only have one runner card left, which is the neutral, and probably the most interesting one that we'll talk about today.
Yeah, here we go. It's DJ Fenris! Yeah! All right. Check it out. So we got a 3-cost resource connection. It's 1 influence, and it's neutral. Limit 1 per deck, and it says host a Gmod identity that does not match the faction of your identity on DJ Fenris when he's installed. Remove host identity from the game if DJ Fenris is uninstalled, and DJ Fenris gains the text of the hosted ability. So... Wow.
Well, I want to make, just to help people that may or may not have already looked it up. The list of Gmods includes...
Wait, are you listing the Gmods or the Gmod?
The Gmod. The Gmod apostrophe S.
Oh.
The Gmods.
Yeah, Judge. Judge.
The Gmods you can choose from are Geist, Chaos Theory, Smoke, Haley Kaplan, Cabanisa Wu, Liza Talking Thunder, brand new, Los, Max, well, Kent Noise is gone, Quetzal, Rena Roja, and Steve Cambridge.
Yeah, it was the controversy I think I saw with this one was the upper and lowercase lettering, right?
Yeah. How are we going to deal with that? Yeah, so there you go. That's quite a compelling list. There are some pretty solid IDs on that list that see competitive play. And there are others with more niche abilities, but might be kind of nice to get that ability for 3 credits and an install, right? So which one of these IDs is exciting you guys to maybe put down on the table? Or is Fenris up to par?
I think it's clever. I don't think he's really been figured out yet. Some more testing because of MWL might have to take into effect how he comes in. But even in some of the top decks, he's still very... he's still a puzzle, I would say. Nobody's really fully figured out how to use him. I think it's very, very interesting mechanic. I think that it's incredible, some of the combos he opens up. Now it's interesting when you start looking at IDs and the abilities that they bring and are they worth 3 credits, and the deck slots. The answer always should be yes, because the IDs should be incredibly powerful. But I don't know. I think that there's some out there that I would kind of gravitate towards. I really like Steam Cambridge's, and I like Ketzel. I like putting that like her ability on this. I think is the underrated one right now.
In the right matchup, right? It's got to be a board state or a ice situation maybe for Ketzel, where choosing Ketzel makes sense.
Yeah, well, that's the thing too. Is that I think that what this does instead of what Rebirth did was I don't think you have to really. It's more of an add-on, right? Like you're not fully switching your main ID, so the archetype of your deck can still fluctuate without this added bonus. So whatever you need to do, like Fenris is more flexible. He can switch records, no issues, right? Like it's not like you have to, you have to come with just one extra one and you're declaring it. You got your full record crate and just put what you need on whatever the crowd is feeling, so. I like it. I really, really think that this is an interesting thing. Somebody like me that really likes to play with these weird off-the-cuff styles and builds. This is something that I've kind of really focused most of my experimentation on and stuff like that is incorporating him. Obviously, the one influence is a kicker, but that's something that you have to kind of incorporate. Realistically, do I think in certain matchups that the one influence is probably undercosted? Yes, but most of the time, man, I don't like my neutrals to cost me influence.
Yeah, but this is a spicy one.
It is, but that's just me
special.
being picky, just because I'm saying that
Yeah.
I have to now be, now I'm like, oh
Sure.
man, another part of my, 15 that I got to juggle around.
Yeah. I think the most interesting clause on this is it's got to be outside of your faction.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's super interesting with regards to getting effects that your faction might not normally have or attack vectors. For example, you brought up Steve, and I think that's a great one. I honestly think that's probably the best criminal Gmod ID for this type of ability. And for Shapers, for example, or even for Anarchs, right? Maybe you're not pressuring HQ that heavily, and then all of a sudden you drop Fenris, and you head to HQ with Steve on the board, and the corp's like, oh, snap, right? Like, this Haley player now cares about getting into HQ, and I gotta defend up HQ, and that it's cool to kind of move into other factions' zones when it comes to their abilities and their styles of play. So yeah, I think this opens up a lot of really intelligent play design.
Yeah, especially the combos that you can obviously flip around too, right? Like even if you're keeping people on their toes, like rebirthing and this guy, certain ones kind of pair together. You have Omar, Steve, kind of some weird kind of play going on there. Yeah, really good touch point to say, like to look at that clause there though, being the does not match the faction. I guess it would be too overpowered if you had some of the faction abilities, because they would synergize with the deck kind of too much, being like a Shaper does kind of feel shapery, like IDs. Criminals all have kind of doing too much pressure on HQ, or putting the like do you know what I mean? Like two similar ones would just be too overpowered in faction.
Right, you're double dipping.
Yeah.
Yeah. Although I will say, it's interesting that you mentioned, finding these synergies, and sometimes they seem, oh, this is nice. But when it comes to unexpected synergies, I think nothing is sweeter with this card than Jess Minder installing a Liza Talking Thunder. That is the bee's knees of ID combinations. Like, it does not get much better than that. Jess Minder player able to draw 2 cards on the cheap. It gives that ID honestly, I think between Liza and Hot Pursuit, like, I don't think everybody's going to be looking at Just Bender, but those players that are maybe interested in trying some janky, interesting stuff, like, give Jess a look, because she's got tools now.
Yeah, I really think that she's that. Even we talked about her before when some of the tools for Liza was coming out, that she was worth the extra look. Interesting point about this card. I kind of would like to see multiple Fenrises going on. No, and I don't mean, I know he's unique, but I mean it doesn't say that he is trashed, right? Like Rebirth is a one-time thing, but only the hosted ID is removed from the game. So it's funny that if you drop a hosted ID down and something happens and you get into a state where maybe you can get Fenris uninstalled, that ID is removed, but when you can bring him back in play, you can just pick a different ID because the board state is different, or you can attack different areas and stuff now. Or maybe you have a Fenris play for early game, or a Fenris that is different than your late game, and everything, like you say, depends on board state. So that'd be kind of really interesting. I would love to watch a high tense game where somebody does something and the corp is blocking perfectly, and then all of a sudden they do something like Fenris out, Fenris in, new ID in, and it just opens up a different attack. And watching the corp pivot, I think that'd be a really fun game to watch.
Just to add my 2 cents as well, in addition to what you guys have said, I kind of also like the additional flexibility this adds to the mini factions. You know, now granted, it doesn't. Actually, I'm not. Let me double check that before I say it.
I don't think it's gonna work out of Apex.
Yeah, I was gonna say, is he virtual? I don't think he is.
He's not. No.
But for Sunny and for Adam, it's interesting to know that you
reboot him down, assimilate her up. Get him.
It doesn't even work with that. It's so janky.
Like, for example, this is going to be really weird. I can see a scenario where. Let me do my little searching here. Trust me, guys. Just trust me, please.
What are you saying? Trust me, it's worth the wait here.
I can see unique scenarios where, for example, hear me out. You'd even be able to utilize things such as Adam, Emergent Creativity, and DJ Fenris to be Haley Kaplan.
Oh.
You see what I'm saying? Where you can say, like, I'll install, and because I'll go search for this other piece of hardware. I have one piece of hardware in my hand. Maybe I need it. I don't know. No matter what it is, or whatever. I'll go get this other card also. Put it. Yeah, I'll bring it in my hand, install it, and Kaplan install another one. Or any number of things, like being able to, because of Kaplan, be able to solve multiple resources at one time, or pieces of hardware at one time, and using all those things together to hurry up and rush things out of your hand. A common thing we've seen with mini factions, that in some cases they do take a while to get up and running. They take a little bit of time because up until recently with with Reverie especially, they haven't really had a lot of pieces to help them assemble. You can utilize faction IDs as a means, like you said, for in the case of Liza Talking Thunder, or if they really, really need economy, in the case of Los, where you can utilize these IDs and now kind of shore up this pretty large weakness you have in faction for you being a little tiny mini faction. I just think stuff like that's really, really cool.
Yeah.
Hey, so
that's great.
I flipped over and looked at the chat for a quick second, and let's have a discussion. Adam brings up an interesting point. Where are you pulling the ID from?
From out of the game.
You're pulling the ID from out of the game and putting it in the game, right? So when Fenris is when you remove the hosted identity from the game, if you put another Fenris in, can't you not take that ID from out of the game and put it back in?
Sure.
So yeah, I didn't think about it.
Makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Totally.
I didn't think about it like that.
Right. They're just sitting off to the side there, removed from the game. Yeah. That's cool. But I like, that you can mix it up or.
So I guess what would it have been more interesting, because you cannot install an ID if it just trashed it. Because then
And it went to your heap.
yeah, because then you could never get it back in, right? There's no way to play an ID, so that way that way it would only be a one-time use of the ID, right?
It's a weird design space, man. It reminds me of Tenon putting advancement tokens on people's ID cards. Like that's some weird design space. But I know what you're saying. Like you get one shot at it.
Yeah, because they're if you're removing it from the game, but you're pulling it from out of the game, it's
Ooh, I'll do you one better. How about this? When you install DJ Fenris, you choose 2 Gmod IDs, and
add them to a sideboard.
No, you have them both hosted, but you have some mechanism of choosing one over the other. Like, say it's power counters, and if it's an odd number of power counters that are currently on there, you're using one ID, and when it's even, use the other one, and you can spend a click or maybe 2 clicks to add a power counter. So it's like you're a DJ going back and forth between your decks, like, hey, I'm Quetzal now, but now I'm Haley, but now I'm Quetzal.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
like,
and you have to put both of them up, right? And then you tap one, and then this one's active, and you keep turning them.
There you go.
Yeah.
Like a DJ.
Yeah.
Oh,
Or let's go back to my way of thinking, where it's so out of the box, it's ridiculous. Is that DJ Fenris actually gives meaning to always including 3 copies of an ID.
Whoa.
So what you have to do is when DJ Fenris is removed, you have to rip that ID in half. So it's like it's now like legacy Netrunner.
Oh my
right?
God.
So you can definitely run out. So you got to use your Fenrises wisely. You don't want to be in the, in that last or the semifinals, and you're like, what if my ID? This is my last Steve Cambridge. I can't rip them up, so I can't install them.
That's hilarious. Yeah, it's super cool design space, and I like the way you think.
Yep.
So,
FFG, you can email me if you have openings.
Done. Got there.
It's just that crazy card design, dude. That crazy card design. Jameson 2018.
Yeah.
We need to get Damon back on the cast and Boggs. I know you guys have pitched game design challenges to them to design cards for you. You got to flip the script. You got to be like, all right, Damon, hit us with a challenge. Give us something good to design. Yeah.
That's hilarious. Well, that's all the runner cards. We end on an interesting one.
Thumbs up. Looking forward to seeing what people brew up with old Fenris.
Yeah, most definitely. All right, let's shift.
All right, let's talk about some organized play type material, some game balancing type material. It's Most Wanted List time.
Yeah, we get paid for the hour, and we have time to fill, so let's stretch.
Hey, it's the big topic, right? It's something people have been talking about, but it's not necessarily that surprising. I think there have been some conversations recently about what a new Most Wanted List could entail, and definitely some, let's just say, hot button issues in the community when it comes to certain cards and decks and
I got some things to say.
And I think this list does a pretty decent job of addressing a lot of those concerns. So do we want to go down the whole thing, or do we want to just get highlights? What do you guys feel like?
Yeah, you can just go over the changes, or...
Yep. Okay, cool. So on the runner side with restricted cards, the big change here is that Mad Dash has been added to the restricted list, and Clone Chip has been taken off. It's back in the game. So that's your runner restricted changes. Thoughts on Mad Dash or Clone Chip?
Hollis?
Shaper back, baby. You know what I mean? Listen, don't call it a comeback, boys. We've been here for years. No,
Yeah.
I really like that. I like the clone chip is back. It's cool. I think the clone chip adds a level of variance. Not variance, excuse me. A level of recursion. Why the hell did I say that? Adds like a level of recursion back into the game that that for a while every faction basically had, because they got to use influence to bring it in, and then it was just gone. And then you even, I think, and there's room. People would disagree, but I think the game sort of changed around not having clone chip.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Right, like Anarch got recursion breakers, and then everyone that wanted them outside of faction took them. But then Shaper got a icebreaker that didn't even care because it could break anything. So it's weird how the game shifted around something being added, and it just sort of fixed itself. Now though, I'm cool. I like it. Well, we're back.
Thematically and foundationally, Shaper not having the clone chips, or I mean, you could have them, but whatever. Shaper taking clone chip off here allows Shaper to do what Shaper does. You were so handcuffed by not being able to manipulate and do all this stuff, and it's almost like if we had said, you know what, you can't play with Sure Gambles anymore, and everyone just be like, what the hell? Such a staple in the game. Clone chip is such a staple in this faction because that's what this faction does. It builds rigs and it recurs. Builds programs, recurs programs. Installs programs, recurs programs. Changes programs. Does things around in that space. That's what it does. Why are you stopping that?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's no fault of Clone Chip Zone, so don't hate on that. Somebody made it.
Yeah, it's a totally iconic card, and it defines the faction. And I think bringing it back, like you guys are saying, I think it put Shapers back on the map.
Yeah.
And for the longest time, the last many months, I think they've been bottom of the pack when it comes to the three main runner factions. And now, all right, let's see what they can put together, because I think Clone Chip puts them right back in there.
Yeah, 100%. It's like your star player. It's like coming off the disabled list. It's like right in the time for Worlds. It's like, LeBron James going to active again. He's coming off, healed from that injury. He had his time. He's in, and now Shaper can do damage. You can make that run for the glory, folks. You can start doing all of those weird Shaper tricks again. One of the biggest ones, obviously, being the synergy with Clot and able to control tempo and put the corp back into the pressure zone. Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome idea. Clap that one up.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see how this affects corp deck building at Worlds. I would not be surprised if this one change shifts the game in either a glacier or asset spammy type direction, because I just don't know if fast advance is that viable. I think it's going to be hard pressed to come out on top.
Yep, 100%. This does more for the deck building side of your corporation now, of how you're going to have to prepare for the threat of Clot being back than it does for just to say, you know what, Clone Chip and Clot are back on the runner side, and we can go back to doing what we do.
Mm-hmm.
Corp's got to change. Corp's got to adapt to this now. Awesome.
Man, can't be running that CI no more, thanks to Clone Chip and other reasons. So there you go. Mad Dash, any thoughts on this one?
I don't like it.
The card or the change?
The change.
Yeah. I understand why.
Same.
But it seems like such an innocuous. It's like when they restricted Mother Goddess. It's like, oh, come on. you've basically killed the card. No one's going to use the restricted slot on Mad Dash.
Right.
It was just a nice effect, but you know, I could see the power there, and there's other options for that slot. So run your Kazi strings or whatever.
Yeah, I really scratch my head at this. I know there was talk about doing this because it was to control tempo and slow the runner down, but I mean, it's not like it was something that you know was an out of the blue thing. It was either you were timing this because of some other stuff, or it was in conjunction with a combo, and there's ways that the Corp could have played out of that. I really think that for what you were getting with this card is it is fine. So I think the only reason that it sits there is because the card was costed wrong when it was printed. And there you go. So if there was any way to go back and errata or change stuff, you know, if we had the old style of most wanted list where influence was adjusted and things like that, that's where this fixed could have been better. Slot some influence in there, errata this to cost something other than 0, but this effect is a moot point, I feel.
Yeah. It's always been a little weird to me that this exists in the same space as Freedom 3 Quality, which is 3 cost,
right,
and clears a Corp current. I don't know.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I mean, I feel... Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, okay, yeah. Just...
I agree that, I mean, putting it on the restricted list does effectively kill it. I mean, looking at everything else on the restricted list, I mean, this is a pretty weak choice compared to Film Critic and Rumor Mill and Levy and Employee Strike. You know, like this feels incredibly weak by comparison. All the same, we live in a world where indexing exists, right? And there's even a little bit more predictability in seeing what the corp is going to have, so or what's on top of the corp's deck. So because of that, I see how the power level of Mad Dash, can be nuts, because you really do start changing the math. If a corp is running 3-pointers, I mean, now the math has changed, because if they run, I mean, that means that a single 3-pointer timed well, and just one more good run, that could be the end of it. Or I mean, when I don't recall a deck list running that many. I recall a lot of deck lists that ran one Mad Dash. I don't recall a lot of deck lists that ran multiple Mad Dash. But I mean, if you did run multiple, again, that clock changes dramatically. Every 2-pointers were 3-point. Every 1-pointers were 2-point. It's like pretty nuts. Pretty nuts. You just make the game so much shorter, and I don't really feel like you sacrifice a lot to use Mad Dash.
Right. So
whereas at least through Freedom, like that was a current. You basically had to utilize a current immediately and know that it was very likely to be gone the following turn if the corp has a current, and it still costs 3. Whereas this is like, I mean, oh no, you're gonna take a. I mean, basically this just. I know this has a negative, but this pretty much just says just make the run, and if you score it in the game, like this is not really a big negative at all.
Yeah, pretty much. Well, farewell, Mad Dash. You won me a couple games. Thanks. And I'll see you later.
All right, the big ones that are removed here.
All right, this is the heavy hitter list.
Yeah.
So we got Hyperdriver out, Mars for Martians out, Tapworm out, and the big boy of the room, it's Zero, gone from the game. Bye-bye.
Someone choose that Hercules song. You call Zero's your hero?
Yeah,
but in this case, Zero. Yeah.
So do you guys feel that are we being too sensitive when we talk about X, this ABC style of deck generates a negative play experience. Is that something that really needs to be worried about?
Yes, if that negative play experience takes away from the fundamental experience of playing the game.
Well said.
And for me, where it comes with Hyperdriver and Zero to some degree, is I don't get to play the game as a corp how I expect to. I expect to be able to take my turn after you take your turn, right? And be able to respond to things that you do. Or, crazy concept, I expect to be able to have cards in hand that I can play when I want to do stuff. And both Hyperdriver and Zero really kind of threaten those core fundamentals, and just aren't fun to play against, because you don't feel like you're playing Netrunner. You're just sitting there waiting for the runner to win, and that's not fun. So I'm glad they're gone. If it wasn't obvious.
Yeah, I mean, I only bring that up just to invoke the thoughts of discussion, but I'm honestly, I'm more iffy about Zero than I am Hyperdriver.
Zero is so good. It's so gross.
I know, right? But I really feel that Hyperdriver, what it did in the terms of the acceleration and the added values that were being generated by that card. Even look to the day when David from the UK built that, like, we started seeing those iterations of Diaper, right? Mm-hmm. Like was just massive when it got set up, like ridiculously a powerhouse that spun out of control. Kudos to his mind for being able to utilize that, or we would never be talking about, like, when this card came out, taking it out of the game, right? Like, but the whole fact of what it could do is just unbelievable. Like you said, Alec, you expect to have back and forth and not somebody sit there and rip off a zillion turns for consecutively for a win.
Yeah.
Just weird. So unfortunately, there'll probably be some people sad to see that go. I know my boy Dave out in the UK was, shouts out again to the mad genius behind those builds, but you had your run, man, and fun's over. But Zero, I understand why, but man, you hate to see something come in and get cuffed so quickly. You would have thought something like that, again, like it would have been curbed coming out, but is what it is.
Yeah.
It really gave Anarch this this econ bump that was a little too unbelievable.
Man, I remember back in the day sitting in a coffee shop playing my Quetzal deck, and saying to my buddy Brett, man, it's going to be great when I draw my Corroder. Boy, I'm just sitting here clicking to draw I'm going to find my breaker. Oh, I found it. I found my Yogg. Those were the days when Anarch felt like chaotic, variable. You find your stuff sometimes, you work with what you've got, and to me, every time they've introduced any kind of draw into Anarch, it gets a little closer to being like, well, wait a second, you put powerful cards in the faction, now they're getting them more consistently.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a critical mass problem again, and I think Zero without the Clan Vengeance synergy would be pretty pushed. With the Clan Vengeance synergy, it's just unpleasant to play against. So, too much of a good thing, I think, for Anarchs.
Yep.
The other ones I could see removed. You see the those Tag Me Thunder decks coming up. Mars for Martians plays into that. And that is a little too ridiculous considering how Criminal is now rebounded to be more of a powerhouse go-to. These builds are seriously, I feel strong. This, we'll see how this curves it a bit. So understandable, right choice there. Unfortunately, when you see it's on it's probably hard decisions when you're actually removing, like killing a card, because this is probably the last most wanted list, right? So if you're playing in this state, these cards are gone. Tapworm, you understandably so, with what the synergy that would be created with Clone Ship coming off.
I'm sad though. I got a special place in my heart for Tappy. That card is just, why can't they let criminals keep their good cards?
Yeah, I know, right? Just
they take them all away.
Yeah.
They're too good.
Yeah, and it's weird though. It's because of some of the decisions, because of the use of cards from other factions that affects the faction, right?
You damn other factions taking our best cards. Yeah, Tapworm is sweet, but it gets out of control.
Yeah, so that's all I have to say about the runner side.
Hollis, you glad that these ones are gone?
Bye. Good riddance. Get out of my face.
Yeah.
You're strong. It's always complicated because I agree with you, especially about Criminal. You want to see them keep some of the really good cards, even if they are a little above the bar, because you want them to have something very strong. But I think that a lot of these cards are placed on the most wanted list because of negative play experience. And I know for a fact when we get to the corpse side, when we talk about identities, there's going to be some opinions about that as well. But I do feel like most definitely the case of Zero. I don't care how new the card is. Alec, we were talking on stream about people with Zero in their decks, and it was just, it's nuts. It's nuts. I think most people pretty much, if they could afford to, they were just it's an every turn use.
Yeah.
Every single turn. It's hard not to rationalize putting it in. Not only that, but Anarchist has the tools so that it minimizes the risk of having that kind of a card in their deck. That's just the truth. They heavily it's heavily minimized. Just having recursion breakers to begin with.
Yeah, I understand that, but like I say, my point was only, it's so weird to see it come out and then be killed just so quickly, like boom boom. It was almost like,
right.
Like I respect the fact that they acknowledge the mistake, but it's just
it's almost, it makes you question. Granted, I could talk all day about the design and the final sign off of things, but it makes you question, whenever the card was being designed. I'm trying to find a way to say this in a way that isn't necessarily delicate, just fair, giving FFG and the playtesters the benefit of the doubt. I understand that with FFG, the available scope. I'm being real. Okay, I understand that with FFG, they probably have a limited scope of how they can playtest based on the current meta, because they not only are playing for the current meta, they're playing for what could the future meta be as additional cards come out, or they're playing for the current meta that will occur after XYZ packs are released. Because I don't know when this card was designed. It might have been at a time when the Anarch had not been completely figured out yet. And that's why, fast forward, Anarch is more well figured out, and then now that everyone really knows what Anarch is capable of in the current card pool, Zero comes out. At the time, they didn't know that it was capable of this, and all of a sudden Zero is amazing. But I still don't know, or I guess my question would be, this just seems so obviously good. it's the kind of card that makes you go, huh, how did this slip by? Because it seems just so obvious why this could be good. I mean, I understand hindsight's 2020. I get the luxury of being able to see this as it comes out, not at the time when it was being tested, right? That's a big benefit of mine. But it's still like, man, this is real good, and I'm pretty sure if they could redo it, either the card would cost more or reduce the effect somehow. Like, it just seems really stupid strong.
Well, in the words of a friend of the show, perception is reality. And
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
Damon said it best, right? Sometimes these things come out, and it seems like, people gravitate towards what is their perceptions of the meta, and Anarch has continued to seem really dominant, and this slots into a lot of those strategies. So, I think it made a strong impression to start with, and hasn't stopped since. So, it's a good one.
You guys
And now
have
it's gone.
anything else to say about Runner?
No.
Okay.
I think they're
So
solid
I think
changes.
Faust should come back. I'm kidding.
So I'll run the transition here, because this is where again, preaching from put my soapbox down, get up. This is what I've been saying for a very long time. Those people who have been BP for a while, this will tie in. So it will be a little bit of a broken record repeat. But the fact that they left it like this is honestly ridiculous and blows my mind. And I think it was the biggest mistake going forward, that they did so much work with IDs on the corporate side of this thing, but they still let Val go untouched. It's honestly ridiculous. That Valencia, to mix things up, to bring in fresh builds, to move the graphs on the runner side of things. Estevez has seen her light of day. That ID has been so powerful for so damn long. Kill it when they killed CI. I don't want to see it ever again. I don't. It's not interesting to me to watch Valencia games anymore. It's not interesting for me to play Valencia games anymore. I understand if you have the competitive edge. She is so incredibly good. Still, I believe that let me see. Yeah, like she's a couple shaves away from being at almost a 60% win rate of her game still in the. Is that going to change very much for most wanted lists? I would say probably not. We've never seen crazy tilts from some stuff. Like, look at they tried to do all this stuff before to break up CI and do this stuff, but CI just tweaked and it went. Finally, they took it out of the game. They said, enough is enough. We're done with this. If we're printing new World Championship decks at the end of this, we're not going to be printing another copy of CI. Get it out of here. They should have done the same with Estevez. It's honestly ridiculous and a misstep not to do anything about it. I can't believe that. Oversight. Step down. Soapbox away.
Tonight, Jameson will be playing the part of me.
The realistic talk. Hey, man.
Does anyone can anyone counterpoint that? Or do you just want to
I can.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I got 2 data points for you, man.
Yeah.
This past weekend, right? There were 2 regionals events. And I can't recall exactly where they were. I think one was in Florida, right? And both of them were with the new Most Wanted list. Guess which Anarch ID came out on top as the number 1 deck in both regionals?
Omar.
No. I bet there was a lot of Omar rebirthing, but no.
Reyna.
No.
Max.
Yep. Both tournaments, Max came out on top.
Yeah. Well, Max.
I think,
yeah.
is enough competitiveness at the top of the Anarch bracket that Val is not the de facto choice. And we got 2 regionals compliant with most wanted list where Max was the victor. So I don't think Val is the only Anarch on the street. I agree. She's getting kind of boring and everyone's seen it and everyone's kind of sick of it. But I don't think it's as clear as maybe you suggest. And the regional winners probably would agree.
I think that I would have liked to see her on the banned list also, and or on the removed list. And let me to tell you why. Jameson is given them his realist.
Well, I'll just say quickly that when a most wanted list or when a change drops to the game, I don't think we should look to the tournaments that fall quickly right after. I mean, when IDs are usually hot and people they don't know the game state, there's a lot of people that are on their toes and their game is a little off. Like when Silhouette won a regional before, I don't think that the sky was falling and she became like this super powerhouse. I think things happen. There is variance here and there, but I think statistically, I think that time will tell, and I still think Estevez is one hell of a pick if you want to stay within Anarch.
I don't disagree with that. I'm just saying I don't think she's the clearest of clear top ID in the faction.
Hollis, to you, my
rip. No. So I think the reason why I feel a way I do about Valencia is I'm going to call it fair, and I know that it's not really a way you should look at it, but this is how I feel, sort of. Generally, in Netrunner, any ID that generates this like kind of absurd economy and that revolve that by themselves is sort of, it's often going to be the go-to. Now, I think that Max, as an example, is a very good ID, obviously. With the combination of recursion breakers, with the ability to get things out of your discard pile, you're going to be running same old things. Basically, your discard pile effectively becomes, those of you that, everyone knows this, but your discard pile, your heap effectively becomes an extension of your hand because of the other cards that you place in the deck. So by extension, even if you're putting cards into your heap, that is actually better than it being in your deck. To an extent, playing Max is giving you vastly more options to play cards than simply just drawing through and trying to find what you're looking for, because you have all these tools at work that help you pull things out of it. That's one way you can play the game. That's one way you can play a deck. Play an Anarch deck. The other one is Val gives you this free credit economy every single turn. Every single turn, you're going to gain a credit. And so because you gain a credit every single time, the immediate comparison I think of about this would be Kate. Where, because of recursion breakers, because of a whole other list of things like that can occur during the game, because you want to trash cards, whatever, I feel like you arguably get to use Val's credit more than you even get to use Kate's credit. And if that's the case, I would stake my claim as now making it fair. If Kate is gone, I kind of don't see why this card isn't also gone. Because even though Max is strong, Max has a very, very sort of specific kind of build that's going to be required. Val is this kind of got this universal strength that's already baked in. And we've seen before when it's been something like that, where there's a effectively universally good ability, it's like kind of shunned. It's the obvious go-to for play. If anything, the reason why Max is immune is because the very specific way you have to build Max decks really plays heavily well towards Max, right? Like you have to run Levy, you got to run same old. Well, you don't have to, but you know what I mean. You're probably gonna run Levy. You're probably gonna have the 3x same old thing. You're gonna have recursion breakers. You're gonna anything and everything. You're gonna play inject to get the most out of your draws every single time because it's all gonna get pitched anyway. So you might as well go super volatile and just say, I'll take the risk. I just need to get the cards in my hand before they disappear. And so, if you want me to, I do think that Val being so vanilla means that if you aren't going to play such a volatile deck like Max, you will basically ignore every other Anarch that exists that isn't Val. So it's basically you play Max or Val. And what's really funny about that is I'm not even mad there's a dominant ID. I just want people to maybe to shake the game up, and this is coming from me. Like, I want it to be gone just if for no other reason, but because I want to see people maybe be willing, if they want to play Anarch, to play something else. Granted, that's sort of nonsense because they won't if Max still exists as well, right? If Val was gone, they're still just going to play Max because that's the best Anarch deck. So, I don't know. I do agree that Val's had her time in the sun, but I also feel like Max has also.
But yeah, but then you do have the ability to like there are cards that definitely hurt Max, right? A lot more than how Val would get hurt, right? Like with when you're doing things that either lock the recursion, you can't play things from your discard. Or you have Chronos and you can score that and just kill it all. But I see what you're saying. You take one out, one becomes dominant. You remove one, the other becomes dominant. It is. It is. But yeah, I'd just like to see some change. I would have liked to see some different bar graphs that don't have the Estevez one up to here. Alex,
is that the purpose of this list, or is it to curb negative play experience type cards?
No, the purpose of this list is to shake up the game. Is to create change in a game that has been played more as a puzzle, where it's figure out what works, what's best, and because it's a living card game, and everyone has the same card pool, it's to create that. That shakeup.
Well, I'm not sure if the explanations on the article agree with that philosophy, but we can get into that with the IDs listed here and their justifications.
But isn't that the same? Is it one in the same? Like I really feel like you're biting your tongue on things to say. Like it,
no, I think it's a real fine line, but that there is a spectrum between this card is so good that it's ubiquitous versus this card is so good and people have bad experiences because it applies some effect that makes the game more unpleasant to play. A card being super good, like Paperclip, or Clot, it's like, okay, these are strong cards, but are they applying an effect on the other player that is unpleasant? That's what I think of as a negative player experience. And noise, right? That's a negative player experience because as a corp, you're like, great, I can just get milled out and not be able to interact, and that's pretty crappy. With these corp IDs we'll talk about, I think those are characteristically unpleasant to play against in a lot of situations. With Val, I get that it's powerful, and I get that change is good, but I don't think it falls squarely in the bin of this is unpleasant to play against. Val having an extra credit per run is not this disruption of what you're trying to do as a corp. It's econ, which is good, but I don't think it's, I don't think it passes the litmus test of these other IDs getting put on the list.
I think what I'm talking about, what you said, that I think it fully plays into the what is written. I brought up the article where it says the list is to promote a meta that is healthy and long lasting. I mean, a long lasting healthy meta is not one dominant runner throughout the last X amount of cycles of the game, and that's
yeah. And I think this list is a ding against Val because she loses 0.
Yeah.
I think 0 is one of the keys to Val's dominance over the last little bit because it's a 50 card ID, and 0 says, hey, let's just draw you way more cards than usual. And so you surmount that slowness of the ID, and all of a sudden it's super competitive because it has no weaknesses. Now with 0 gone, it's like, okay, now you got to respect that your deck is now 50 cards, and you have fewer draw options, so
Yeah,
it's not the go-to.
No, but it's also, I feel like, very comparable to the CI thing where you just take one card out and then the ID just adapts. Val was strong before 0. I feel it's going to be good after 0. I agree with all the points you were saying about the paperclip situation, but I feel the best way to change and influence the game is in the IDs. And I think the cards, how they're available everywhere and they're more all over, those can be controlled and restricted. But when you take the core, for me, of a deck, which is the ID, that's what can be powerful in itself.
Yeah.
And I have some more to say on it as we move into the corporation stuff. So.
Well, let's get into that corp stuff because I think it's worth talking about.
Yeah, this is
I think
so juicy.
This is the biggest. This for me, the whole list. This is the biggest section right here. This is huge. So restricted, Ryan Stinson, restricted, potential unleashed, restricted, Scorpions, restricted, Surveyor, restricted.
Yeah.
Violet level clearance was moved to the restricted list from the removed list, and Fairchild 3 released to the wild and is now off the restricted.
Clap that one up.
All right.
The only
thoughts?
So the only thing I have to say about this is I really don't like the IDs to be restricted. I understand why they're trying to curve it. It's to break up the use of other restricted cards being used in it. But I really, I just don't like it. If it was that problematic, it has to be that detrimental that you're really thinking about removing it, restricting an ID. I just don't like it. I don't like it mechanically. I don't like it from a perspective. I hate it. I cringe seeing potential unleashed on here. I understand the playstyle that it created, but I don't think it was as dominant. It wasn't like all in your face, like everyone was bringing potential unleashed and stuff like that. There was a lot of people that hated Scorpios, hated it because of what it did. But I just don't know if this is the right thing to do. Is restrict an ID.
Yeah, I think it's tough with IDs like this because the number of tools you have in order to deal with them balance-wise is pretty limited. I actually don't necessarily mind restricting an ID because I think both of the IDs are powerful enough on their own that they'll still function as intended. But they do lose access to some of their best pieces. So
it's tough, right?
I don't know.
Yeah, like I'm having a hard time really conveying and explaining how I feel about it. I think like I was watching you and you're pausing and I think we're both wrestling with it, and it's like, how do you create an answer for these using the constraint or the already predefined system? And this is the system that they have. You either restrict it or remove it. Should it be removed? No. Does it need an answer? I guess. And this is the only way that they could create an answer. But does it feel right? To me, it just doesn't, right? Like
here's what I'm trying to convey. Here's what I think is interesting about these restrictions. We've joked about other cards going on the restricted list, and that kills them, right? Mother Goddess, restricted, it's dead.
True.
Mad Dash, restricted, it's dead.
True.
But with these IDs restricted, I actually don't know if it kills them. I actually think there's enough power in there, and the factions have enough cards that still synergize with them, that they are not unplayable for being on the restricted list. Now, granted, it's a huge power decrease, and it's debatable whether the power decrease was even warranted. But my point is, I think you can still play them, and they will do the things that they are able to do pretty well. That's why I think they're in an interesting space on the restricted list, rather than removed.
And in a weird way, I kind of feel like, man, I feel like it's weird. I feel like the restricted list on the Corp still allows for a lot more flexibility than, say, this is hard to say. Still allows for a lot of like flexibility than, say, compared to the runner list. And the reason why I say that is because as I look at the two, as I try to compare them, here's what I see. So let me get this towel out of the way. It's bothering the heck out of me.
Sorry if everyone just heard a smash.
Like here's what bothers me. Like when I look at the restricted list for the Corp side, I'm seeing, like, for example, like I can see how there would be issues like Obokata and Potential Unleashed. Obviously, I can see how that's like really, really powerful. I can see the issues between Scorpios and Hunter Seeker and all those options, and of course GFI. GFI deserves to be on the restricted list. Is that good? But I still feel like I agree with you. Like I feel like there are so many tools still remaining in these factions, and I don't think that their linchpins are, Obokata Protocol or Mumbat City Grid or Hunter Seeker. Because, I mean, for example, Hunter Seeker's been on there for a while. Barney's newer, but I still feel like if you play Scorpios, I don't really think you're hard pressed to play these other cards. I think you can just make a Scorpio deck and be like, this is fine. I got what I need. I got some tools. I'm good.
I've lost plenty of times against Scorpios, and they never played a Hunter Seeker. They never scored a Global Food.
Right.
They don't necessarily need these cards to win.
Was it government contracts?
Yeah.
I don't want to jump the gun, and I know the game is ending, but it definitely feels like maybe even them being added is more of like a future power check, if you want to call it that, right? Like, I think they are good enough by themselves to where, if more cards were made, they'd be concerned. It'd be like, well, hold on, can we actually print this card? Because if Scorpios gets it, or if Potential Unleashed gets it, it's nuts. And it is interesting that this is done this way, so these IDs can never use any of the other power cards, any of the power 12.
Yeah. So here's the thing too, is that I feel like I'm more okay with the Scorpios one being on there, although the reasoning behind it was very weird when they said that it's prone to negative play experience, but it basically it's 50-50. Like he's saying, it's not being restricted because it's power. It is one of the identities most prone to negative play experience. It either does absolutely nothing to the runner or it wrecks their deck. And I'm like, that's so weird to say, like, that's, hey, this is either going to dominate or, to have that level of swing and to be like, we should probably restrict this. Is interesting. Yeah. But the fact that its ability, there is no answer to it. Once something is removed from the game, I mean, unless that's an ID on Fenris, you're not bringing another card back into the game, so there's no counter. The thing that's interesting, the fact of balance and things like that, is I feel that Shaper is coming. We're on the roller coaster uptick with Shaper right now. So Potential Unleashed, there, I feel like there's that balance because you're trashing cards, and with what we could see the recursion coming in is that there is now another answer to it. Where with Scorpios, there not being an answer to where I'm saying remove that card from the game. That's gone. So it's really weird that they came down on Potential Unleashed like they did with Clone Ship going back in. I guess in an alternate world, if there was a longer player or a longer state of testing that could have been done, maybe they could have left Potential Unleashed off a little bit longer and see how the adaptation of Clone Ship coming back affected that recursion, if it was able to rebound good enough. Granted, I mean, there was probably a little bit of testing in the background, but and then if it still was as dominant, then they're like, okay, yeah, we still have to put Potential Unleashed. We still have to do something, because basically I feel it's only there because of the Obokata protocol stuff with it. But at least, like I say, now we have an answer to it, so it just feels rushed to me. I guess that's the answer or the thing I'm looking for. I would have loved to see Clone Ship be able to see where the state of the game is and then adjust later. Nisei, guys, if maybe you can do something, save us, Nisei. You're our only hope. But yeah, it's just something about Potential Unleashed being on this list. That's what my stance is. It feels rushed. I guess that's a good.
Totally fair. Yep.
All the others I have nothing to say about. You want to put Stinson there, you want to put Surveyor there, you want Violent Level Clearance there, Fairchild, fine. I can see it. I can see the justification on each level. The IDs, weird.
Yeah.
Surveyor, man. I mean, what a card, right? When we first saw this, we all were like, yeah, this is solid. You know how good you got to be to knock another piece of ice that was also on this list off? Like, you know how good you got to be? Surveyor was so good, FFG went, you know what? Maybe Fairchild 3 is better.
Yeah.
Like, it was so good, they were like, yeah.
I think, yet again, this is a case of just too low influence on a cycle where I think the influences cost in general were on average higher, but too influence, man. We said it at the time, and we continue to say it.
Yeah.
Like, we saw this thing everywhere.
And it was funny because reading the article, I just heard that, like, we done effed up voice in my head when I was reading that line. It's like, Surveyor, it's like Hollis doing his nerd voice. It just turned out to be stronger than we anticipated, right? And I'm just like, oh man, I'm so glad they actually just said, without coming out, we done effed up, man.
Yeah.
Our previous calculations yielded. Like, could not have predicted. Like, it really is that strong.
Yeah.
It really is like maybe. Yeah.
Just too influence, man. It's never been a hurdle, I think, for any deck with 15. And once again,
I know this episode's kind of long, but let me hit you with Magical Christmas Land real quick.
Whoa.
You think Surveyor comes off this list if it's like 5 influence, Wayland only, or is it that good? It can't even be in Wayland, or it can't be in Wayland unrestricted?
Yo, I love Wayland, so hell, give Wayland a interesting, super powerful card. I don't mind it.
Yeah. Yeah, right? Give him, like, who cares if, like, that's why, like take Scorpios off, take Surveyor off. If this is the last straw of the game, just let's stack the deck towards Wayland and let them shine, man.
Yeah. Just let them win.
Just,
like,
yeah.
We get it.
Yeah. Right? They paid their dues for 6 years. Let them have something. Let me get a piece of the pie. 24/7 news, and we look at Estelle Moon and Museum of History, the 3 playable cards moving to removed. You guys good with those ones?
Oh, get them out.
Yeah.
I hate Moon. I hate it so much. It might be my least favorite card. It's just so annoying to play against. There is basically no counterplay, and it just feels bad. It just feels so bad. You're just like, yep.
Feels bad, man.
The corp is accelerated so far ahead, and I can't do anything about it. So,
yep.
Get the heck Yeah.
Everyone on the same page here. I don't think there's any huge talking points. I kind of had a soft spot for 24/7 news just because I really loved it in my old Jinteki style build decks as that surprise. Yeah. But I understand that people weren't playing it as funky as that style of deck build. They were wreaking and raining down the pain with 24/7 news cycle. So understandably, I understand.
Yeah.
C'est la vie.
It's a shame because you really want. The thing is, when you look at 24/7, you see there's this potential to do really cool stuff, but then the best cards in the game, or the best of some of the best options in the game to use it on, remove that. Like it just makes it to where it's like, well, I can't really do that because then you just get all these tags. I really can't have that.
Yeah. So it was cool, but I loved it. To score an early Philotic and be able to do that, or hit a Chronos protocol and early when they have nothing and they think, oh, he's all his Chronos are done, and then you can blow one of these. I loved it for those surprise effects like that, but like I say, understandable. Moving on to the big one, I don't think you're going to hear complaints from anyone to see CI officially be removed because, like I have already said, no matter what they do, this deck just adapts. It's this damn amoeba that just like morphs into something else every time, keeping its power level, keeping its domination. It has loyal fans that will lay their life down for CI. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised that CI has such a dedicated following that there's still going to be someone that shows up to Worlds with a CI deck and says, I don't care, I'm playing CI. This is it.
I just love drawing cards.
Yeah.
I just love holding big hands of cards. Yeah, man. This idea has been such a problem, and it's really because it breaks a core fundamental rule of the game, which is you've got 5 cards max, and you got to do something cool with them. And if you can happen to combo into cool stuff with those 5 cards, congrats. But just the inevitability and the inability of the runner to meaningfully deal with this ID, it was always going to get there. Mm-hmm. Particularly in a faction that generates 1 billion clicks and can combo off even in a normal HP deck. CI can just make the most of it. And it's frankly absurd ID. So,
well, nothing to add.
Yeah.
That means I'm turning it to you, Hollis.
Talking about Cerebral?
Yeah. Right? Yeah.
You in this conversation?
Good fucking riddance.
Hey.
Hey, if you're the person that enjoyed having that deck, that's great. I'm happy that you enjoyed everyone else wanting to leave the fucking game. I'm glad that you contributed to everybody like having Phil's bads just so you could like win a playmat. Thanks. I'm kidding. It's not that deep. But I do think that it does generate to me it is the negative play experience. I know what I just said is going to hurt people's feelings, or they're going to be a little sensitive about it. They're going to talk about it later, like, and cuss me out with, over the internet. I do not care that you winning a playmat results in people wanting to leave the game. You horrible, horrible person. I do not care about you winning. Sorry. People have to play your game for you winning to mean anything. Sorry. Sorry. Now that that's gotten out. Yeah, but like.
Not sorry.
That's what I'm saying. It's like yeah, but like I should be allowed to do it. Yeah, you really should be. But like people have to actually enjoy playing for you winning to be worth a damn. But it just like you said, Jameson. Like we ended up in that scenario where people would play it and then they would make a small change, like put a card, like for example, like vital level clearance on the most one, on remove it completely, and players of CI would just go, "Oh, we're good, thanks." They're like, like in my head, they're like, "Oh, you put that on the list." No, I guess we got to use the other good cards. Oh, man. Like, I mean, that's basically what happened. And, like you said, it adapted. In general, having the ability to have all the cards in your hand, having your, I'm just gonna say whole deck effectively in your hand, meant that, and in a combination with cards like at the time,
He's got his whole deck in his hands. He's got the whole deck.
oh my god,
Got there.
but that allowed.
I thought, Alec, you probably got a better voice to sing that than I do. I was hoping that you. I was delaying. I was hoping you were gonna serenade it.
No, man, it's beautiful.
But it generates so many negative experiences that, and it was so hard to give like legit counterplay. Even if you had the cards like even when you could slot the clot, hashtag slot the clot. Even when you could do that, it was that point. It wasn't just oh no, what am I going to do? This cuts off that line of play. Now it's, well, what additional steps have to be taken so I can just ignore this line of play?
Yeah.
I have to make sure that I have this many clicks and this many biotic labors and this many whatever, so that I can CVS and then re-get CVS and then do it again. And then when you end up in scenarios like that where they can there's always a way around it that way. And it's a large combo deck that a lot of the time won, in a single turn. It doesn't make you feel like there's much you can do. It does very much feel like the corp is just sort of playing solitaire. And there's not really that interaction. And I feel like Netrunner is best when you do have that interaction between the two, between the runner and the corp side. Even if all the interaction is ice that has an ability that auto fires. Like, you can't ignore that. Even I think that still makes the game better. I wish, Magic Christmas Land, if years go by and they reprint this game, I hope that is the single mechanic that is now the new thing. I hope that the majority of ice has an effect that happens on res or on win encounter or both, right? Like I hope that all ice has an ability that says when res it does this or when encounter it does this, and then it also has subroutines. Because when you remove that out of the game and ice never fires, then you're like, all right, I guess I'll just play a deck like CI where ice is largely irrelevant. I just need to play solitaire and play and play it out to win. So I don't know. I'm happy. I'm not sad to see CI on here. I have one regret, and that is CI has been bad, but it was also bad during some of the worst parts of the game, which was during the Mudbat cycle, and when there were a lot of other negative play experiences. And I feel my only regret about CI is that it's being added to the list at the end of the game, not way sooner. I feel like CI should have been on this list a long time ago. I feel like when they first made the most wanted list, CI should have been on it immediately. Because if you recall, I hope you do, there was a time where CI wasn't on the list, and even after the most wanted list, we're like, CI's not on, that's interesting, and then CI is still wrecking. People are still playing combo decks, and all we could really do, especially on when we would talk about it here, when I would talk about it in other casts and other stuff, all we would do was just complain, like, FFG, you see the stats, right? Like, we're not nuts. Like, you can see that this is winning, and you're doing nothing. So what are we gonna do? And I don't think CI got worse than it was. If anything, I think the current iteration of CI, prior to Violet versus after Violet was put on or whatever, was still good. It was still as strong because it was with Jackson.
Yeah, but that's hesitant to do anything with IDs though back then.
Right.
That's true.
That's totally the point I was going to make. That it's the reluctance on the part of this company and on the part of the way that they operate to make these big changes. And we saw over the course of the most wanted list, like, first it was influence, and then it was restricting stuff, and now you're removing stuff. And IDs were like this holy part of the process that couldn't be touched by most wanted lists. And now, the tools have expanded over time for their ability to balance the game. And I agree that it's a shame that we didn't get here sooner. But I think that speaks a lot more to FFG's willingness to make changes like this and just accept the fact that sometimes they print cards that are too good, and they need to be removed from the game.
A lot of good lessons learned going forward for card games for FFG with how long Netrunner's been in, and for what they have accomplished. They've definitely come a long way.
There you go.
Guys, that about wraps it up for us. I don't think there's anything else to say. This has probably been one of my most favorite episodes in a long time. Having real off the cuff, great discussions happening here. Let me know your feelings about everything as we've aired ours out down below. Let it fly, because you can hide behind a YouTube moniker where this is us, and we're on record now forever. So, appreciate it. Good luck to everyone doing the world's things.
Hey, good luck to Hollis, who's going to be rocking that phenomenal Peach Hack brand quality grade A Netrunner content at Worlds.
Oh.
It's going to be so sweet seeing our boy on the cast there. Hollis, you're going to do great, man.
No pressure.
It's going to be so fun. Hey, it's going to be phenomenal. We're going to have a lot of different people. We're going to be watching here who are going to be helping out on the stream. And you at home can also help out if you've not heard. Ben, Mr. Peachak, Dodge Pong himself, is going to be doing this thing, and he's got some costs to get up there, get his equipment up there, and all that. He's got a GoFundMe. It's been a phenomenal success. He's raised his minimum goal in very few hours, record time. Got there, but you could still check it out, and you could still use your help. He's been providing great content for years, and this is sort of the crowning achievement for the community to see this stream. So if you could check out that GoFundMe and just get excited for the stuff he's going to bring us, that'd be cool. So
Yeah,
there's
this is it. This
Peach Hack shout out.
This is the crowning achievement of everything that is Netrunner. I'll be watching. I'll be keeping track. I have the tally here about how many shout outs Peach Hack owes us. I hope they remember we're still going, and tune back here, and you will be able to catch more bad publicity on the flip side of Worlds, where we'll talk about everything that goes down, and carrying on the fun Netrunner contents. Guys, appreciate everybody that hangs out with us. We are out. Good luck, everyone.
Later, guys.
Have a good night, everybody.